Welcome to the model of procurement process. We will go through this process in this model. And what is the difference between purchasing and procurement? We were through the whole purchasing details and processes in the previous model, but remember that purchasing is a process about how goods and services are ordered. So the key processes in purchases are raising purchase orders and arranging payments. On the other hand, sourcing is procurement, is more strategic. It goes through sourcing plus a strategic selection of goods and services. So the key processes inside procurement are researching, negotiation, and planning. So one goal of the procurement training program is to establish a common language between regarding procurement and purchasing. If we go through, again, purchasing is the process of obtaining goods and services, or purchase means acquisition of goods and services, including leasing or renting goods. On the other hand, procurement is the combination of the functions that include identifying needs, initiating procurement project, selecting vendor, contracting with a vendor, etc. Procurement is also based on the historic demand of a specific item or service, and also go through funding, that is through sourcing, more competitive prices or new vendors or new options for the same items or services. So, steps are the following. We have a planning phase that accounts with identify the needs and outcomes, communicate needs with agency, identify scope, timeline, and requirements, and identify vendors, as well as define scope. A statement of work is important for this part of the procurement. Then we go through solicitation and selection. That includes communicate formal needs with vendors. They have a whole formal communication process and documents. Evaluate the vendors, again through a specific process and policies. Then select the vendor. It has also a special communication phase. And then the post-procurement that includes the negotiation of the contract with the selected vendor, and then the contract execution and management. So this is the part of the follow-up of the whole procurement process. So the first step is to identify the need and outcomes. What is the main thing with this step? You should ask the question to get the answer about why does your agency purchase goods and services. You can go through data, you can go through meetings, you should go through, you could go through the assessment of and the processes and understand what the company buys and what services needs, and start from that point, identify how those items and services has been purchased in the past. So the common reasons could be like your agency uses goods or services to perform daily operation. That's the obvious answer. Your agency uses systems to perform internal operation and support its primary function. Should be also like an obvious answer. Or requires service to support essential programs to support the mission of the company. Does an internal expertise or does not have an internal expertise or can perform a specific function efficiently and efficiently. So in those cases is why your company needs to buy specific goods and services. So after that, the needs analysis needs to demonstrate that something is really needed and that is aligned to support the mission of the company. So this step is for clarifying what is going to be purchased and how it will satisfy the need through a critical thinking. It's very important to have critical thinking in terms of that connect the need to what outcomes you would like to see, and effectively brainstorming the alternative and evaluating those alternatives. Do we need to buy or hire that services? So you go through the needs again, the alternative that were analyzed and why some alternatives were not chosen. So we need to move to the buy or to hire the service that was chosen, and then the outcome expected for the purchase or procurement of that item or service. All through this cycle that is regarding the critical thinking and the outcomes, you go through identify the need, Again, identify alternatives available. Do we really need to buy something? Do we really need to hire that services? Do we really does not have that capacity inside the company? So you evaluate and analyze that, and then identify the outcome and expected results. This could be a key information from the following steps. Go through step two. The step two have two tasks. The one is initiating the planning process. To engage with small businesses, owners, and other stakeholders, then conduct independent research, and for determine checkpoints and delegate authority. Let's see how that works. In this step number one, this consists of a kickoff procurement process. So use intake process to begin a procurement. Then this is different in different agencies depending on the organization. If it's centralized, decentralized, vary between those two. So an example of this is like DES use an intake form for internal procurement. This is a formal document that is completed by the business owner or a contract manager with a description of what the procurement is for, when it's required, funding, if there's a budget associated with that, and any other things. So it is signed by the corporate assistant director. That's the one that approved that to initiate the process. And then the procurement is assigned to the contract consultant, who then start the firm procurement team. So you have to make sure that you have pre-qualified vendors for this need. If not, you need to proceed with the procurement. Number two, you engage with a subject manager expert or a business owner or contract manager or another stakeholder. You need to these two input of requirement and the scope of the statement of work of the procurement. You need more information to start the procurement process. In addition, this subject manager expert or contract manager and other will provide you with the requirement, the specification, the scope of the statement, and you need to engage with the subject matter expert at this early stage when building support for the need and justification of the project. At the end, this step is a good momentum to the involvement of the stakeholder in the buy-in, so they can help you to validate the need to management and other approvers. This you are moving forward to formalize the scope and to get the approval to initiate the process. So in step number three, after you get the formal approval and the stakeholder buy-in, you start to conduct the research. This is an independent research on different procurement options. An independent market research will let you know if there is a competitive or sole source procurement is appropriate. If there is how many vendors are available in the market, if the work need special skills that are not available. So at the end, this market research procurement should be conducted to conclude that alternative resources were inappropriate or unavailable as part of the justification. Research could be helpful, and is what is the approach to conduct the procurement. This step should not be rushed because it will save money at the end, and it will help your company to understand different ways to access the capacity or the service that I need. At this point, you need to check a delegated authority. What this means, you need to be sure one direction should be taken. If procuring, plan your actions and objectives from the step one, to define the needs and then the scope and everything. Research procurement options, determine if competitive sole source, start process, and the outcome should be the initiation of the purchase order or contract within procurement limits. If urgency, only go and initiate the purchase order within purchase limits by contract. 3. That's identify the scope, requirement, and timeline. You already have from the previous steps. You have some information to complete here in this step. This step will help you define the high-level functions, including procurement, the high-level project scope, requirements, and timeline that are needed. To be sure that the agency thinks through work breakdown structure and also has all the time the information that they need to describe the best solutions to meet project needs. So step 3, in this step, you go through these 4 phases. You define the contract purpose, the high-level functional areas that will be involved, the contractor responsibilities, and the contract phase and timeline. Also, they will help you to identify what is not in scope, because we are going to give more formal shape to the scope of the procurement. So in this step 3, you should consider these project components as you are defining the scope. The contract purpose, what is the objective of the contract, the high-level function areas that are in scope. It's just important to identify what's not in scope. That's really important in terms of the contract. The contractor responsibilities, what is important to include in scope of the contract responsibility, the primary functional areas, the contractor will be responsible for providing service on product solutions. And then the contract phase timeline, you need to plan to a proper resource the entire period of performance of the contract. Most of the projects that need a special procurement as part of their activities, when the project owners or the project manager does not take this enough time in this step, that's why at the end they need to go through a whole contract change processes, because most of the things are not clearly defined at the beginning. So take time, maybe it could be boring, but it's necessary, time and money. So as I told you, the common pitfalls in the scope of work requirements and writing are too strict and rigid. The scope, not enough details. That's a big fail. Writing to a certain variable or solution, not related with the initial need, or outdated or obsolete requirements. All of these 4, and we can do like a list of more than 100 items, could be common mistakes where the people is writing down the scope of a procurement of a specific things. So in this point, to be go further in those things, the specification could be more strict than they need to be, so this often results in less competition and higher costs. That's at the end, you will pay more if you are very strict with different things, with the color of the things, etc. Maybe there's not enough requirement details, so in the specification, it's typical to have at the end quality problems. So I just may meet a specification but do not work in the desired application. Wider requirements that exclude otherwise acceptable vendors who may increase the agency cost. And there is obsolete specification that work in the past may not necessarily work in the present future. So apparently things can change. You need to review, see what changes in terms of the regulation, the product in which the company will be installing. At the end, all of these 4 things, when they're not working well, will increase the cost for the company. So let's go to step 4. Here we identify the vendor's list, knowledge of vendor marketplace, vendor repeat communication, and other sources. All of this is in case when this is well organized, it's a very formal communication in writing process. So during this step 4, the agency, as it sounds, will identify the vendors that will provide the goods and the services. So the vendor list will category of service. You will have vendor list for category service of product that will be available. For most of the time, the companies have a system where they have vendors master list. When they already have like a work of providers for each specific things, this must facilitate the work. In other cases, you should go through external databases. Then the control manager and the subject manager expert knowledge of vendor marketplace in case there is not a specific one or there is too few in the vendor's master list. Then the vendor private communication, you would say like maybe that will depend if it's a public company, a government company, or a private company. Maybe you have to go through a formal communication that you will start a bid process or some vendors that are invited to participate in the procurement process. So other sources of vendors could be trade industry groups, listen, internet, or agencies. Most of the country have a list of providers from different categories of services and products. So according to the American Purchasing Institute, these are some examples of resources that are available to identify vendors through a pre-bid communication. You will have a vendor list and associated contact information can be useful, and we talk in the company master vendors file. So you can go through request for information. This is a formal document too. Vendors demonstration, a pre-procurement vendor conference that maybe can reveal that a potential vendors who will bid on the project, or ensuring you have the most up-to-date contact information of the vendor. At the end, all of these and sources of a vendor list that will increase your master list. In the case of the request of information, this is not a bidding method. This is a formal document that you usually go through a newspaper, on the internet, or your website, that you will say that you are looking for vendors for a specific thing. And at the end, a procurement practice used to obtain comments, feedback, reaction from potential supplier or contractor. In this request for information, you are not asking for price, cost. You don't need information about what a specific vendor is available to provide in terms of what do you need or what you are looking for. Step 5. Define scope and or statement of work. This is, remember the different scope of work versus statement of work. Remember that the statement of work is made part of future contract with selected vendors. So develop the definitions and define terminology before you start. The scope we have where and about what should be part of the scope in the previous step. So let's learn more about this. First, the scope of work is a detailed description. It's a graded one that put in black and white what should be part or what should be the requirements of the project contained with a competitive solicitation document. The scope of work should establish a clear understanding of what is required by the vendor and only what is required for that specific work. It's kind of the definition also for the PM book from the PMI. And on the other hand, the statement of work is the response from the vendor in conducting a request for proposal, outlining very specifically how they propose to complete the work as outlined in the scope of work. So the scope of work should be so detailed so the potential vendor can give you as the detail how they are proposed to complete the work that is contained in the scope of work. If not conducting a request for proposal, the statement of work then should be determined and included in the contract document. This will clarify the boundaries of the service or the product that will be provided to the company. In the step 5, so we have the following stages: requirement and specification, and objectives, deliverables, milestones, schedule, reports and requirements, and performance standard. All of these are part of the statement of work. So the project requirements, such as what needs to be done, quality standards, division responsibilities. It includes the deliverables, a specific tangible measure tasks that must be accomplished, work breakdown structure, what is the main deliverable, what are each part that compounds that deliverable. The whole points or milestone are the key decision points that will go through the schedule, so we will stop in those milestones to take decisions or review the project. So oftentimes the whole points of milestone are used to give the option to the buyer to determine the service or withhold payment until the work is performed satisfactorily. The schedule is very important. It includes the contract phases, procurement length, contract length, other key data such as legislative deadlines, date, main contract occurrence. It has the most important dates from the procurement process. The reporting requirements. It monthly include the performance evaluation factors and the acceptance criteria. So what will be validated to accept that the product was delivered as was required, the service was performed as was required. The performance standards define the results to be achieved by the product, service, etc. So we will go again the performance standards to see if the whole procurement contract has been complied. And the requirements and specification, the statement of work specification to meet your needs, process measured by determining whether the product, service, or system perform the tasks as described in the requirement and specifications. Now let's go to the step number 6, that is the communication, the formal need to the vendor. It includes 3 phases: request for quote, quotation or qualification, request for qualifications, request for proposal, and request for bids, or request for qualification, quotation. There is another form to request or to communicate formally with the vendor. All of these 3 take into account in your mind that these are formal communication processes. So when you are ready to communicate the formal need and release your official procurement to the vendors, the goal here is to get the best value, best price, and minimize the contract terms that are favorable to state and minimize the risk to your agency. First, you need to identify what type of procurement document to use. Remember that we mentioned before that if you need to get more vendors to start your researching process, you will go through and request for information. But if you want to get like just a price for something specific that you are very clear what you need and the scope is very clear, you will go through directly request for quotation. But if you need to verify some specific qualifications that are part of the requirement for a specific scope of a procurement process within a contract, you will need to go like a request for qualification and quote because you need more information. But if your process is more, your requirement is more complex and you need more than just a price and qualification, you will go through a request for proposal. And if you only need an offer for specific things and you have clearly identified your vendors, you will go through the letter to request bids. So let's see some examples. For a request for quotation, you have language translation, document storage, equipment rental, paper sharing service, steam cleaning service, pet weight control service, copy paper. Cost is the highest weight factor when you're looking for the best price from multiple qualified vendors in the case of this document. In request for and qualifications, examples are grant writing, quality assurance, price and services, economic analysis, paper stock for granted, maintenance services, child support checking points. In the case for request for bidding, request for proposals, you have like, for example, design and implementation of an information technology system to solve complex business problems or needs. That complex procurement. Major business process analysis and assessment within an agency or major program of an agency. Major assessment and testing process. Research related to major health scientific policy. At the end, you can have an idea what is the different process that you would need to use a specific document or process of communication. So this chart is very good to understand better what I just stated. You have here the solicitation need, what is request for quotation, request for quotation and qualification, request for proposal, request for bid. In case there is a standard and ongoing purchases, you can go through the first 2. Many vendors offer this. You go through these 2. Cost is the most important factor, so you need to send a request for quotation. If you need to validate the qualification of a vendor and performance, important in addition to cost, you will go through FQQ or REP or FEB. If you need a vendor specialization, few offer this, you go through the last 2. Complex project needs, definitely you go through the last 2. Of solution required to meet the needs, you go through the last 2. So in summary, in step number 6, we go through assignment procurement coordinator. If we think in terms of what detailing needs to be done. In this case, it defined the list of potential vendors, encourage registration of another vendors, draft solicitation content, requirements, sales level of complexity. We have been talking about this. Issue solicitation, post amendment, etc., and receive bids, documents, date, time, maintain confidentiality. So this is a common steps associated with formal communication, release of solicitation document to a vendor. Regardless of which method you use, there are some steps that all need to be done. Remember, all of these steps should be follow a formal process. In some countries, if this is government vendors bids, you need to go through formal document printed and sealed envelopes and that kind of stuff. In another company, you have a system to do that, or you go through handle through this that through email attachment documents, or you go through a formal website that handle the sourcing. So that will depends what is the approach and the type of industry you are going through. So after receiving the bids, this person that we talked, the RFQ coordinator, does the following. First, evaluate the cost and rates and bids in accordance with the RFQ or ranks bids. This needs a formal sheet to have all this information, and mainly in Excel. Then it awards to the lowest cost, responsive bid, and responsible bidder. So the responsive bidder, a contractor, business, and individual who has submitted bid or proposal that fully confront material, etc. Is a contractor, responsible, entity individual who is fully capable to meet all the requirements of the solicitation and subsequent contract. Then, after that, the coordinator announces a very successful bidder and notifies unsuccessful bidders. This should be a formal communication, conduct the briefings, requests, and negotiate and award the contract. Then the team is selected, so establish the team roles, write specifications, identify the RFP or RFB, coordinator for project, the scope, around bids. Then it write down the draft of the document. It's supposed to have the project approach, the methodology, the finalized scope of work that we have been working in the previous steps, deliverables and milestone management and staffing planning, bidder response format, cost response format, finalize the release of the document, so it goes through a stakeholder review for the draft, finalize the draft, and then post and publish the RFP or the RFB. Then post-release activities are the follow-up to respond to the bidders, the draft amendments or addendums if necessary, so it goes through the evaluation process step 7. Because of the complexity of these processes and the need to evaluate qualification, in addition to the cost of the RFQ, there are some more detailed steps needed. This is a very complex but very important process to go through step by step. And without the formality of this process, you should have like a spreadsheet with following issues like this. Vendor name, to consolidate all the information and to start building the cost sheets for everything that you are asking for. This. All of this need this formal analysis and documentation. They communicate the formal need with vendors. In these sheets, you should normally include all of the information that are solicited to the vendors. What you do is this part of the documentation that the provider should complete, so you have all of the information in the way that you require it. By providing this, so the vendor, you're assuring that you receive the costs that are issued to evaluate and you compare apples to apples, as I just told you. And it is helpful for you as evaluators to get information from bidders about the way they determine the cost as well. This is really important. So it will help you to understand if, how much you can go further to ask for better prices or not, because you will go deep and analyze their costs and everything. Okay, then we go to step 7. This is the evaluation objective, the step that we are going through after all of the phases that we did before. So this Objectives are to provide clear direction and guidance, ensure integrity of fair evaluation process, create a documented process, and recommend a fair contract award. What I used to do in the past is like in this part, you provide the information for the decision makers because they will grant it like to bias and independent opinion. And at the end, it will help you with this. When you do evaluation step consideration, confidentiality, security, conflict of interest, evaluation of milestone, and evaluator availability. So in terms of the security and confidentiality, this is essential to grant the clarity of the communication during the group process and show you like your impartial and fairness to all bidders. It's responsibility of every participant in the procurement process to ensure security and confidentiality that are maintained. Also, as this formal process, you define like one channel of communication and avoid the conflict of interest. And that goes beyond because to avoid the conflict of interest, you need like strong policies in the company that granted that there will not be like third parties that are related with someone that works there that will take part of that bid, so that goes further through that. In the standard practice, the evaluators are other members of the procurement team, as I just explained, that sign a confidentiality and conflict of interest. So you will have like two parts of the a good control process. One prepare the information, another one do the evaluation through a very confidentiality and transparent process. So the evaluation roles look typically like this: the procurement coordinator that ensure adherence and prepare and distribute the information. Then you have like an evaluation committee. This is for the most complex procurement process. Then evaluate and do the score based on the information that you provide and the score matrix that you and the criteria that you define as a procurement unit. And then you have the executive sponsorship that supports and authorizes and controls the expenditures. You need the three goals to grant the transparency of the process and a fair process in face of the bidders. So some of the procurement coordinator responsibilities include the opening of proposals, whether via email or in hard copy, keeping proposals secure, conduct responsible review, ensure adherence to proposal submission requirements, provide the evaluation team with guidance and training of the evaluation process, instruct team to sign the confidentiality and conflict of interest. That should be a document that also should be part of the policies of the company. Receive and distribute all proposals and evaluation materials to evaluation team, preparation and distribution of intent to award notice on successful bidders notices, schedules debriefing. Then the evaluation teams evaluate the scores, proposal or any oral presentation provided by the bidders. That will depend on what is defined by the procurement team. And then the executive sponsorship, they supports and authorize the scope of the project. This was defined before. As well, it controls and authorizes the expenditures of the funds. And it's kind of endorsement, independent endorsement of the selected bidder or bidders. So at the end, step 7 go through phase 1, initiation of technical and management response. Phase 3, oral presentation, if applicable, depends on the complexity of the bidding process. Then the phase 4, evaluation of cost of proposal. Then the phase 5, best and final offer, and phase 6, ranking of proposals. This is like the summary of all the steps that we have been going through. Then this evaluation team score, responsive bid, proposal, etc. is strictly against criteria set for the RPB and the RPB. It's a good practice to use score sheets. We talked this in the previous classes, where they have the requirement for the technical and management response. In the case of technical response, the RPB describing how the work should be worked, and then the response is aligned with the scope of work that what is needed. In the terms of the management response, the proposed bidder and bidder staff qualification experience to implement the solution, ability to meet the project schedules and the product a specification related to product certifying effectiveness. So at the end, you should translate or to put all of this in detail in a spreadsheet when all of the criteria, evaluation criteria should be put there, and then the evaluation committee can go very easy through this to score all of the proposals. In some cases, oral interviews or product demonstrations are required, so you need to put that in the document and invite bidder to interview with the evaluation team. Each bidder asks the same set of questions as part of the standard process. The answers should be documented, scored, and ranked. Invite bidder if it's needed to a product demonstration based on the script provided by the agency. Each bidder receives the same set of scripts and document scoring, taking demonstration. Take into account that this part, demonstration and oral interview, should be go through the same questions and the same process. This is to guarantee the transparency and the fairness of the process. Then you again go through the evaluation using the worksheets that include in the RFP of the RFP. To go through the cost analysis breakdown of the total price and the whole components, and then propose the rate, fees, cost to complete the work, and provide the product or value based on the lower the option of that procurement process or the best service, and the component will be awarded to the highest points. Then you go through the ranking and selection to proceed with award. You determine the ranking of bids on final evaluation scoring. Then you do go through the reference checks because you ask in the RFP of the RFP letters as references of the work, and then that you add that to the score of each proposal, and then at the end the evaluation should be based on these multiple factors: technical, how close is this bid, complies with the approach of the business solution that is looking for. In terms of the management, what is the staff qualification experience that is part of the team of that vendor. The products, the specifications are related with the certification effectiveness that the company is required, and in terms of cost, is the fees rate and everything are provided are in terms of what is required. Not it should be not all the time the lower cost option is the best one to be choose. Should be a balance. Well, matrix designers should be taking into account the multiple factors, not only the cost. So when we talk about technical evaluation, you can use a technical evaluation criteria that take into account, for example, like this. This is just an illustration. Each company should design or matrix, but you can take this as an example. You have like the executive summary, vendor identifying information, points, weighted score, qualification of firm, the maximum score, what score, approach to a scope of work, qualification of proposed key personnel, what's the maximum, what was the score, corporate references, what was the score and what is the maximum. Total weight score, you will have 1,000, if you have 1,000, go through the next phase. So the technical evaluation criteria should include the executive summary and the vendor identifying information, qualification of firm, approach to the scope of work, qualification of proposer key personnel, corporate references, a total weight score. At the end, this major scoring evaluation criteria should include the average evaluation of individual score, concession score, and raw score based on percentage that should be then scored based of the total percentage that is complete. At the end, what is really important is what are the items that should be evaluated, as I show you in the example, and the way you transform that in percentage of points. At the end, you should have also clear what is the criteria to move forward with that vendor. In terms of the cost evaluation, you will have this example, you will have the components, each one of the vendors, and then you will have what is the cost of that, and then you summarize that, and you will have which one is the option, best option in terms of cost. Again, it will depend on what is the objective of the specific procurement process. Is only cost, or it should be the weight of another items. Once the evaluation is complete, you have two options: award the process to the highest scoring bidder, or reject all bids and reissue the solicitation. In case the process was awarded to the highest scoring bidder, then select apparent successful bidder and notify the bidder in writing of the work decision. Again, this whole process goes through a formal communication, letters, documents. You also need to notify unsuccessful bidders. Then you go through the post-award decisions on the work breakdown structure, and then you notification start the 3 business days after the briefing request, etc. Where is possible, because none of the bidders comply with a minimum average evaluation points, then you should formalize that all bids were not acceptable, then cancel the solicitation and revise and reissue needs, conditions, change at the agency, funding, etc. Take into account, if you go through that, it's a good point before doing again to start like a lesson learning session to understand what happened and was why that process was failed, if it's something that needs to be improved inside the company. So at the end, if the agency can reject the bid of any vendor who has failed to perform satisfactory of previous contract with the state. Well, this is like a formal policy of the state or the company. You can save time not inviting vendors that were not good with the company in previous contract. You should have that as a first practice, documented what was the performance of each vendor in previous contract with your company. Then once all bidders have been notified, you need to start doing the debriefings if requested. Following the award, as you get ready to negotiate, establish a contract, make sure the solicitation files are completed. This is a well format and organized process. All of the documents need to be filled, completed, organized, so you have all of that ready. You have a well performance of underperforming big amount. You will receive for sure your internal auditors to go through the whole process to make sure that the process complies company policies and controls. Be ready after the award communication that unsuccessful bidders will be request a debriefing for sure, especially for those high cost biddings. The company must hold the debriefing within 3 business days of request, and the vendor cannot protest if they not debrief. That should be part of the notification of the process. All of this information should be explained clearly in the RFP and the RFP documents that conduct the briefings requested by the vendor. The briefing conference must be conducted with unsuccessful bidders as requested. Start the clock for the 5 business days to protest period. If a protest is submitted, careful follow the bid protest procedures according to the RFP and RFP schedule. You should be defining your company policies to handle the debriefing and doing that politely, because those should be potential vendors for another bidding request. Then the step number 9, this is the post-procurement. It's composed with 4 phases: can do baseline contract review, edit contract based on proposal, finalize and road for signatures, and then the contract starts. Then the step number 10, this is when the contract execution starts. You have the initial kickoff meeting, the providers, the company, etc., the business owner, the team. That's the first point of the start of the project. Then start from the procurement process, the contract management framework, all of the phases that requires to comply with all the formal documentation that are requested to validate that the process is getting according to the contract, and all the milestones are performing. So all of the payments that are recurring through the contract should be managed in that way. And at the end of the process, the project management that is in charge of should be the project management team, the business owner that is handling the project, or the PMO office. Okay, then the responsibility for the contract transition go through the procurement professional to the contract manager. So it goes through the contract execution that is signed by all parties and will begin. Then you have the initial kickoff meeting that it has a specific purpose. There is a top communication plan, clarify any contract requirements, define change order process, team meet agreed, work of any issues, get peer performance. After the goal start, document the meeting and all decision made. This meeting is really important and it should start the project as well as it's like sometimes it looks like the clarification of all the things that were through the whole process, and now that will handle the execution of the contract or the project that was hired. Then the contract management framework that goes through the contract manager's monitoring plan. But as I just explained before, what are the functions in terms of the procurement part, and the project manager, that is maybe in some parts the contract manager that should treat the management and monitoring of the contract like a project, but even though this is not mentioned there, the procurement department also has a special function in terms of granted the whole process of execution is handled. And be aware in case that something not planned happen. So at the end, in the contract execution and management transition is a mix that is as part of the ongoing control management and start to play an important role, the risk mitigation, they comply with the contract, approve contractual invoices, that's really important, and schedule monitoring. All of this is part of the follow-up and the ongoing contract management. As a result, an effective contract management and monitoring ensure that the following aspects are applied or considered: protect the public interest, ensure quality and quantity of the service that were contracted, protect against waste, fraud, abuse, negative publicity, don't begin work before the contract is executed, formally signed, execute amendments before the contract expires or before amendment work begins. This is usually most of the huge problem where this is not handled well. Don't change the statement of work, cost periods, or performance without an amendment, and following a best practice through the project management institute. This whole change go through a contract change management process that is a very formal process that assure that an amendment is stated, and also the contract should be stated how this contract management process should be issued. Don't sign the contractor's contract formal without a legal review. This is also important. Don't do the contract without a lawyer. A contract monitor is planned when peer activity that measures and ensure contractor complies with the terms and requirements of the contract. So this is kind of the main things that defines an effective contract management and monitoring. So monitoring of the contract takes place after the contract is executed and work was begun. So helps prevent non-compliance by identifying and resolving problems. It's dynamic. Monitoring purpose is help to mitigate risk, and monitoring ensures that the contractor is complying with of the contract, in compliance with the contract special terms, adhering the project schedule, providing the quality of service expected. And at the end, if something goes right as was defined following the whole step that we were studying in this model, the company will save costs, because any mistakes in a contract process, award process, and then the execution of the contract ends in a risk and more cost. At the end, monitoring activities should include periodic contractor reporting, agents review of the reports, monitor corrective actions, invoice reviews, compare billings versus contract terms and parameters, conduct and document on-site reviews in case that will depend on the project that is performed, And at the end, if corrective action is needed, first they should be addressed in the contract how this part could be handled. That's the best practice. If not, the contract was poor defined. Anyways, the corrective actions should be addressed sufficiently quickly. Procurement professional, the department, would be advised and seek special advice regarding right of actions where necessary. Seek the lawyer department, inform management, the stakeholder of the project, document the process, and the final decision, what should be done with the contract and everything, should be handled through negotiation. Withhold the payment or terminate the contract. Also, all of the actions to be done should be clearly written in the formal contract. So people, this is the end of the procurement model. See you in the next model.